Recording in progress.
And just keep it muted.
It's great.
I think Dave needs to turn off the sound on his computer.
I just did.
But it'll pick it up. This will pick him up speaking. Yeah, but at least this. Hopefully.
Better.
Okay.
It's better now.
Okay.
You're good.
Great. Okay. All right. Great. Well, if we're all good, then please all rise for the pledge of allegiance to the public in the order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, item number 3 for Selectmen's updates. I think our last meeting. But after July 4th? Hello? Yeah, we had one after. So we talked about the events and stuff like that. But quick update, Surf Club Master Plan, where we are in the process for that. We're still taking feedback from the public. There's an email that we're, if you have comments or questions, you can review the material online and then submit questions or comments to us. We're trying to aggregate that all and load that up online as frequently asked questions and try to address some concerns. And then our consultant is going to be working with the Beach and Rec Commission next month to come up with a follow-on kind of survey on certain things, kind of digging down at some specific issues that kind of came up through the pandemic period. So they'll be coming to the Beach and Rec Commission to talk about that, develop a survey to get additional feedback and address some of the concerns. And then the idea would be that, in September, we would decide are we going to modify the concept plan or, to reflect some of those comments or what tweaks we want to make to it. So that'll be kind of the process, and we'll get an update at the end of August, I think, on all that. And then we'll also have an update on the issue with the old seawall at the beach. That will be an ongoing conversation about what our plans are to address that, along with the Surf Club plan, because it all kind of ties together. And then Academy, I'm still just waiting for this site assessment report for the septic. Unfortunately, I was told the end of June. I've gotten some follow-up that I will be getting something soon. So I'm hoping to receive that soon. It's just taking longer than I would have hoped. So once we do receive that, then we can kind of talk about that and how that impacts any decision going forward in terms of the Academy facility. And with that, that's my update. We'll be talking a lot about other town buildings tonight with our presentation later today. Turn it over to board members.
Nope, I was going to mention the Beach and Rec Commission. We'll be hearing again from the consultants in their August meeting. But other than that.
Quick update for me on the Tree Advisory Committee, which we created about 12 months ago. They have been diligently meeting throughout the last 12 months and are getting ready to come and visit with the Selectmen at one of our September meetings. They have developed policy recommendations, and they've also been involved with the Planning and Zoning Commission's rewrite of their regulations. So they've been busy folks. We'll hear from them in September.
Let's see, the senior commission just had a meeting last week. A member of the public did attend, and they brought up some concerns about the number of accessible parking spots that were available at the senior center. So Austin is going to, I believe, talk with facilities and see if there's any way to add additional accessible parking spots at the senior center. But I would also like to just add, there's a lot of great activities going on. There's a new activity specifically that marries our older population and our youth population. And it's an opportunity for young kids in the community to meet with some of our members of our senior center and just have conversations about interesting topics. So this is a monthly thing that information can be found on the senior center website or in their newsletter for signups. So it's really a fun program, right?
I do that, Jen.
What was that?
I do that too. Yeah, I'm thinking, why not?
Wisconsin.
Yes.
So a real quick update on the Scranton Library. So there was an amazing book sale that was done, record numbers of dollars raised. So super excited. I know the Scranton Library was really happy with the results of that book sale. So kudos to them.
Oh, you know what? And I will put in one more plug for another community organization, the Madison JCs, who run our turkey trot and our triathlon and do a lot of great work for members of the community. They are hosting their annual summer party this Friday at Surf Club. So tickets, I believe, are still available for that. So live music, food trucks, all down at the Surf Club building if people are interested in attending.
Great, okay. So I guess moving on to citizens' comments, item number 5. Any hands raised on anybody in the room first? Yes, please state your name and address.
Dennis Crowe, 141 Far Lake Drive. I'd like to address 2 items that are on the agenda. I can't stay to see the results of your meeting, but I would like to address them. One is the idea of passing an ordinance to put aside funding for affordable housing or whatever. I'm hoping that is just an absolute no-go, because the taxpayer money, once it's put into that item, it goes to people who are not our taxpayers. They go to other people, and we can never touch it again. It's in the trust fund. It's there, and that money belongs to the townspeople, not to the trust fund for other people. And I would be very much opposed to that. So also, the second item that I would like to address would be the facilities plan. Mr. Gonzalez has been going around to town organizations, 2 of which I'm a member of, and he has presented these plans, options, and so on. I don't have any knowledge of what the final plan is that he's going to be presenting, but I do hope that there are plenty of options. Some of the word that is filtered out in various places say, well, some of these things are like, we want to do this and this in Jeffrey, and this for Memorial Town campus and so on, without options to go there. Just here's the thing, and I can't stay to see what will be presented, but I'll be looking at the rest, and I hope that we have plenty of options, because I think it's a great idea to go through this plan. I'm just hoping that we can have a lot of different options. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? And then we'll go down online. No? Okay, great. Any hands raised online?
Yes. Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, it's Jim Schmaltz, 5 Jonathan's Landing. Hope everybody had a good weekend. I've got a few questions. First, I had asked about why the academy bond wasn't reallocated to the school bond, and instead we paid to create new bonds so that it's and I thought that like you would answer those offline if we asked in the meetings, and it would be put in the minutes or something. If that's changed, let me know. Okay. I guess maybe
Your
it'll
second
be.
comment?
I'm sorry?
You said you had 2 comments?
Yeah. Okay, so I thought that you might be able to answer that. Following up on Dennis's, about the trust fund and using taxpayer funds, one of the things that really, concerns me is we have, according to the Affordable Housing Committee, it's close to 1 in 4 homes live paycheck to paycheck. And you're going to start to take money from them to create, more homes that we're, subsidizing. The other thing is, if I understand this correctly, so we have a senior tax program. So for the seniors who have been in Madison, let's say their entire lives, they're living on a small pension or Social Security, can't make their taxes. We have a program, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding on the way it works is we basically will defer the taxes for them until they, move on one way or another and sell the property, and then it becomes, the taxes become due at that point once the property's sold. But we're also charging an interest for that. So again, we're taking money from these people that are, paycheck to paycheck or can't even afford to pay their property taxes to stay in town, and we're going to give it to other people. That is not what, government should be doing. It shouldn't be picking and saying we're going to create housing for, X amount of random people to come and live in this town. If we're going to use the argument that it's policemen and firemen and things like that, increase the salary of the teachers. The teachers, on average, according to the math I did, is about $100,000 a year, so they're not going to qualify. And then again, going into the same thing with the facilities committee. They originally were supposed to be doing reports on the usage of the buildings, the condition of the buildings, and the cost to run the buildings. I haven't seen any of that in the meetings, so hopefully that will be coming out today. What I did see in the meetings was as soon as Academy got voted down, there was a pivot to create a theater in another location in Memorial Town Hall. We have people in there currently, most of which are not paying rent. We're just spending a lot of money on these different programs. We need to really focus. And I know that that's what this presentation is supposed to be, but I feel that the focus was on what the administration wants and not necessarily what the people want. We spent money on reports to figure out all the town properties that we own and also what those properties could be used for from a housing standpoint. And in the meeting, they were saying there was 120 to 140 housing units. They would generate $1 million in additional revenue in taxes that could be used to build out Memorial Town Hall and these other programs.
So Jim, thank you for your comments. So we obviously take notes here, but in the interest of time, we try to keep comments to 2 minutes. So if you want to wrap it up.
I'd like to keep going, but it sounds like you're cutting me off. I'd like an answer on the Academy
Just be
bonds.
respectful of time and you're.
No, I'll be respectful of your time. Is there a time we could get together and have a discussion where we're not limited to 2 minutes?
Well, there are opportunities for that, but we'll talk about that later. So with that,
Just like,
any other
when
hands
can we talk
raised?
about this later?
Is there any other?
We're going to talk later about creating a later time. Thank you.
Is there any other hands raised? Thank you, Jim.
Yes, there is. Go ahead, Nick.
Hi, everyone. So this is Nick Postavoy, 598 Otoe Road. So my question is also on comments. My comments are on the proposed draft for Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It's my understanding the state of Connecticut is requiring this, but I don't believe there's any teeth to enforcing it. That said, if our taxpayer dollars are placed into this trust, how will the town replace those funds for other municipal services? Should taxpayers expect higher taxes or reduction in service in the future years? That's my question. And then, yeah, and I was going to talk a little bit about the town property. I wonder how the town people are going to be able to vet the options that are available for our town property. That's my 2 comments.
Okay, thank you. And we think a lot of these questions on the Affordable Trust Fund are going to be part of the discussion later. And there'll also be a public hearing on the actual proposed ordinance. So tonight we would just be focusing on sending it to a public hearing. Any other hands raised?
Not online.
Okay, great. All right.
Peggy, mine is raised. This is Scott. Regarding Jim, listen, just call Peggy's office and schedule a meeting. That's the answer to your question. That's a very easy way to have a conversation with somebody person to person is call her office and schedule a meeting. Full stop. Thank you.
Happy to do it. I meet with people all the time that come in or have phone conversations with them. So, okay, moving on then. Actually, I'd like to just real quickly make a motion to open up the agenda and add item number 10A. Make it a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, now I'd like to make a motion. Well, actually, no, then we added the 10A. So, and then I'll read the motion later, what's actually in motion 10A. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, item number 7 is we'd like to accept Madison bicentennial the donation. We're seeing acceptance of Madison bicentennial flag created and donated by Bettina Breasted, Sylvan lady, in honor of Madison's 200th anniversary.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Just want to say that Bettina, if you are at the Surf Club, you will see this wonderful flag that she donated to the town that she created with our Madison 200th bicentennial logo, which is an incredible piece of work. It's a beautiful thing. Oh, good. She got the picture up. I didn't know if we were going to have that. So thank you. So anyways, just want to say thank you to her. That will go to the town archives at one point as one of the memorials for that, but it's just a nice acknowledgement of a resident. We've had a lot of people step up and make donations, and this is one of the things that was donated we thought was really cool. So with that, all in favor of accepting the donation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, Bettina. Okay, item number 8, discuss and take action to accept a recommendation from the Facilities Department to award a contract to Demco in the amount of $147,442.69 for the replacement of the Colson Middle School Library Media Center furniture, and authorizing the first selectman to sign all documents associated with this award funded in the fiscal year 26-27 CIP and fiscal year 26-27 CNRE BOE maintenance plan.
So moved. Second.
Okay. So I don't know if there's any questions about this. There was some material in the packet on this. And I think this Ben is available online. I saw him if there's any specific questions. No?
Nope.
All right. With that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Item number 9, discuss and take action to accept a recommendation from the Facilities Department to award a contract to BMP Construction in the amount of $296,482 for the locker and toilet room renovations at town campus gym facility, and authorizing the first selectman to sign all documents associated with this award funded in the fiscal year 26-27 CNRE town campus gym floor bath renovation and 2023 Steve grant.
Second.
Okay, any comments on this? This is one that I have to give a lot of credit to Ben. We had just a limited amount of funds left over to get this part of the project done. And through multiple iterations, finally came up with a plan that would work and stay within budget. So I don't know, any further questions on that? So it'd be nice to get those bathrooms. They're pretty messy in the township. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to item number 10. Discuss and take action to approve a request from the Public Works Department to move the replacement of a 2003 Volvo wheel loader from CIP Highway Equipment, replacement reserve fiscal year 29-30 to fiscal year 26-27, pending Board of Finance approval. So moved.
Second.
Okay, so I'll let Sam explain this. You got a lot of information. This was something that came up quickly. It was equipment failure, basically, that we're trying to address.
So the crew came to us with a bunch of safety issues with the loader. This is the loader that's up at the brush facility. And the biggest one is the floor in the cab is rusting out. And they basically have it covered up with the carpet. So once we saw this, we took the machine out of red tag and took it out of service. So we're down a machine up there using the backhoe in the meantime until they could straight it in. We'll be looking at the purchase of another machine. So we went to WI Clark, and they gave us the list price for this machine that we're gonna get is $385,000. With trading in the existing machine, it was just red tag. They're gonna give us $20,000 for that. We got the price of the machine down to $222,000. And then we added, and of course, you got to add on buckets and forks and stuff like that. So that brings the price up, the total price of $252. Because I'm sure you saw the information was in the packet. So not only is the floor is bad on the machine, but the locks for the pins to keep the pins so all the machine stays together, those keep breaking. And I think it's probably because everything's getting out around inside the bushings, and it's just shearing off the bolts. So they keep welding it up, they keep putting Band-Aids on it. Sooner or later, something catastrophic is gonna happen, so that's why red tagged it. Don't really like moving stuff up. And as you know, all this equipment really wasn't in the CIP replacement until about 3-4 years ago.
Well,
We probably should have been doing.
we didn't really have robust equipment replacement, so we started that like 4 years ago,
Right.
so. And we'll try to check everything.
So the other thing that the loader garage up at the brush facility got condemned about 3 years ago, so we're working on getting that fixed. Of course, the machine's been sitting outside, so I think that kind of, moved all this deterioration along, more rapidly than really what it should have. But the machine it's 23 years old, got almost 18,000 hours on it. So it's done its job. We got our money's worth out of it. It just needs a new home someplace else.
Well, and I will say that we're using existing funds. It's just limiting it up, so there'll be some rejigging. The CIP committee will have to look at the schedule at the end of this year, because this is but we're doing a lease, so it won't take such a hard hit, and we'll be paying the lease through the fund. So we're not asking for any extra money. We're just moving it up the schedule. Yeah.
Sam, CIP is getting ready to start its next cycle. Are there other items in the equipment reserve account, other pieces of equipment that don't last as long as they used to last?
Well, so the more stuff you leave outside, that's why we're trying to get this,
Yeah.
the addition onto the garage. If we can get this equipment inside and keep it protected, it'll last longer. I know we have 2 sweepers that are kind of in tough shape. They put a lot of money into those. We're trying to keep things working and moving along, but.
I mean,
we're doing another analysis on the fleet. It's coming up.
This lasted 23 years.
Yes.
We were hoping it was going to last another 4. Is that right?
Well, we were hoping.
Yeah.
These things are expensive, that's for sure, but very important for maintenance up there. So, any further questions on this? No?
Nope.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, then I'll move on to 10A. This is just proceeding with all the different action items for that. So at number 10A, which I added earlier, discuss and take action to award a contract between the town of Madison and the WI Clark Company to purchase the John Deere wheel loader and all related equipment in the amount of $252,855 as funded by the Highway Vehicle Replacement Reserve, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all necessary contracts and documents. So moved.
Second.
Okay, just to follow up with the specifics to award the contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then item number 11 is the lease contract having to deal with this. So item number 11 is discuss and take action to amend the 5-year capital lease agreement with First American to add the purchase of a 2026 John Deere 544P tier wheel loader and related equipment, and authorize the first selectman to sign all documents associated with this lease, pending Board of Finance approval. So moved.
Second.
Okay, and I think they're gonna try to do a quick special meeting for Board of Finance to get this done, so that they can get the order in, I know, and then we lucked out because we were just completing the lease agreement for some other equipment that had been approved in the budget. And so she was able to tag us into that, and the terms were favorable, so. So any other further questions on that? No, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. All right, so Moving on to item number 12 is to discuss the proposed draft Affordable Housing Trust Fund ordinance. I know we've had several meetings on this. I know we have the Affordable Housing Committee here. The board was presented a draft ordinance. There was some changes that was made to it based on conversations the board had had. And then another draft came forward that was recommended by the committee. I know that one of my colleagues here, Bruce, had some concerns. I know you guys connected after that meeting. And I think the decision was just that the draft reflected everything that the committee thought was appropriate for the Housing Trust Fund ordinance. So I guess with that, you know, I know we had quite a robust debate about this already, right? There's some philosophical differences amongst having this trust fund. I do want to highlight that the purpose of the fund is not to pump a bunch of money into it to subsidize housing. The purpose is actually to accept donations, apply for grants. If the town wanted to put a little bit of money there to help pay for like some planning documents or site review documents as we look at affordable housing, that was the only intention for having any type of taxpayer funding going into this. And the idea being you still have to go through 2 boards to do it. And obviously, depending on the amount of money, it would have to go to town meeting as well. So it's just giving that option available to future boards or this board with, you know, trying to have some, we have all these different things coming down from the state that we're going to have to be spending money on to review. We're going to be working on an affordable housing plan with the Council of Governments to update and change and come up with a regional housing plan. So there's just a lot of things. And this is one way to kind of set the money aside, similar to what we've done with the Coastal Resiliency Reserve Fund, so that we have this funding there that we can tap into more easily. That's kind of my view of it. So I don't know if each board member just wants to state their, and then we have the committee here if you have some more questions.
Sure. And we met and we had some really good conversations about the intent and the purpose of the fund. I don't object to the existence of the fund. I think, as I've stated from the beginning, while it may not be the intention to use property tax dollars, direct and indirect, this clearly paves the road for that to happen. It allows for the diversion of existing town revenues in the form of building permit fees to be put into this fund. That deficit would have to be made up with new tax dollars assessed on properties through the mill rate. It allows for municipal appropriations, which the cynic in me says that a board of selectmen and a board of finance, if they're inclined, could do hundreds of thousands of dollars a year without a town meeting vote. And that troubles me. So it is a significant amount of money that could be diverted into this fund that would then be lost to the community for paving the roads or doing anything else. I think it's very unlikely that we would seek bonding money for it, but it mentions specifically in here that the town can seek to borrow money to fund this trust. And I think for those reasons, I think there are some other weaknesses in the language that are not, not killers for this document, but for me, the notion that we would divert direct and indirect property tax money into this fund is causing me to say I can't support this.
Okay. Comments?
Like Bruce, I support the creation of the fund, and I'm no better predicting the future than anybody else. A future board of selectmen and a future town meeting may find it appropriate at some point in time for some reason to put town funds in here, but I think the primary purpose of creating this is to create a vehicle to receive grant monies and donations and other things to help us move towards our communal objective of creating a broader diversity of housing. So I support the creation. I support taking this to the public. I want to hear what the public has to say. But it makes perfect sense to me to create this, almost like a savings account, this vehicle to receive funds, which will be, probably available for this topic. So I'd like to continue to move ahead on this.
Okay, make a good comment, so.
Yeah, I mean, combination of what Bruce and Al are saying, overarching idea for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, I think is a very positive thing. But like Bruce, I don't like the wording that includes the infusion or potential infusion of tax dollars. I do question, one of the areas for sources of funding includes building fees and that sort of thing. We already account for those in our budget and in terms of how they're going to be used to support the town as is. So does that mean we are diverting those building fees? Does it mean that we are now adding new building fees? So these are just questions that arise from that. Again, if people want to make donations into it, if we want to be able to accept grant money into the fund, I think those are all very positive things. I do also, and I know I expressed this at the last affordable housing meeting, have a concern about one of the expenditure items from the fund, and that included, let's see, funds may also be used for community development and human services programs that assist those households that are below 80%. So that's another piece of the puzzle that, what does that look like in the future? What if we can provide assistance for one period of time, but we can't provide assistance later on? And then now are we being asked to incorporate that into our budget as a whole? So there are, with some of these wording issues that we're talking about, I would personally need to see those cleaned up before I could support moving forward.
So were those raised with the committee?
I did bring that up at the last meeting, specific about the,
I don't know if you want to address any of this or if there's.
Specifically,
Yeah.
what Jim has said is the only way in the wording is, and if the town accomplishes its 10% of affordable housing, deemed restricted affordable housing, or gets a waiver from the state for having made progress, that would be the only time that possibility would be available to the committee. More generally, I think from Bruce was saying before, I understand the sensitivity about using taxpayer money, but I also believe that the Board of Selectmen have a responsibility to decide what is going to happen right now, and that in the future, boards of selectmen should be able to have the same ability to decide how they want to do this. Handcuffing them by saying you can't use any taxpayer money at any time for any purpose for this particular fund is basically handcuffing your future Board of Selectmen, and I think that's not the way it really should go forward.
Although I do think it's worth saying that the Board of Selectmen can enact an ordinance and the Board of Selectmen can modify an ordinance. In this case, it's a little unique because what we can't do is dissolve the trust. That's a nuance of the state regulation, that's not an original idea here in Madison. The state has said once you've created it, that's it. It has to stay there. So we could easily strike those funding sources, and a future board could enact them, right? So while we're enacting them now, a future board could remove them, right? My worry is that we're just signaling our intention.
Well, yeah, but I think one of the things that the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to be actively discussing is, some towns, and this is modeled after other communities, they actually charge developer fees. If they're going to go in and build luxury housing, they have to pay into an affordable housing trust fund in order to assist the town to meet the affordability needs. Real estate's very valuable, right? So developers don't want to add affordable housing typically because it's going to hurt their profit, right? So the Planning and Zoning Commission and the board could decide that we do want to put an additional fee. That's not diverting. It is creating a new fee that would allow a revenue stream to help assist in affordable housing. So I'm not saying there's attention now, but the Planning and Zoning Commission is going through the whole regulatory discussion. So to me, this is a broader conversation. Like, what are we going to do to help assist in affordable housing in Madison? This is a structure that just gives a lot of different options to the boards, right? And it goes through a public approval process. It goes through 2 boards under 250. If it's over 250, it has to go to a town meeting, right? Any money that goes into this. So we do this for anything that we do. And if both boards want to do this, it will pass and the money will go there. So that means the elected representatives of the town feel this is an important public policy thing and that money should go in this direction. So I'm just saying, I feel like you're trying to whittle this down to almost symbolic rather than something that could actually work either 5 years from now or 10 years from now. There's all this stuff coming down from the state now that we have to go through with our regional plan for housing. So in my opinion, I feel like let's do the public hearing and see. We have a few people that have voiced opinions. Send it to public hearing as is. I mean, you don't have to vote to send it to public hearing if you don't want, but let's hear more about, and I feel there is some not understanding about what this is necessarily out there as well. So educate the public about it.
I would like to also just one thing, Scott, and then I'll throw it to you in case you have any comments, but we have, in my experience so far with the board, kind of taken baby steps towards things, even with the tree ordinance. We start with something small and then expand upon it as we see how it's working and as we get more comfortable with it. So I really don't see why we would want to take a different approach with something like this, dip our toe in the water, see what the response is. And this is what we have
but that's what our committee is. That was the dipping our toe. And then we did the affordable housing plan. There were specific action items listed in that plan that we as a board adopted unanimously. One of them was the Housing Affordable Trust Fund. That was in our plan. So whereas the tree committee, there's no ordinance, right? So they were going to come out eventually probably with some recommendations and potential ordinances that they want us to do in terms of permitting. But we're further along with this. I feel like that plan was passed 3 years ago, 2 years or 4 years ago.
The affordable, I think that was before my time.
That was the affordable housing plan that was required to do for the state. It passed unanimously. It created this committee, and this committee has been trying to move something forward. This is a very difficult topic, and to me, this is kind of a baby step because it is more symbolic that we're embracing what their charge is, that we want to make a difference. I don't think this is some runaway thing. I feel like you're turning this into like, we're going to put millions of dollars in this and then just hand out checks to people and they can go buy. I mean, this is a small step, but it's giving them the confidence that we are serious about trying to make some change here and that our board is unified in wanting to be, moving forward and addressing the affordability issue of housing in Madison. That's how I see this, but I get it. Scott, I know is online, and then, we'll just vote for we can do public hearing, and then we'll see what the public thinks. Scott, would you like to?
I think we have an opportunity here to lead and to be bold and to do things in a way that are not baby steps and are an opportunity to maybe do things the right way and set things in motion to provide some opportunities for some people in need. And I think, again, this is not, playing any games with taxpayer money. This is talking about opportunities for donations. So I'm completely in support of this. I think this is the right thing to do.
So I think that, obviously we've had a lot of conversations. We have a little disagreement. Tonight we're voting to send it to public hearing, right? So if everybody's comfortable with their discussion, any more points that anybody wants to make?
Just an open question for us is what if there's overwhelming support in the hearing, then it's pretty straightforward, right? We know what the community wants. If there's overwhelming opposition to it, what's our response?
Well, I think we then, as a board, collaborate as we always do on ordinances, just have a discussion. We may agree that we want to make some amendments. We may agree that we're always going to disagree and we have a vote. I think we just have that discussion afterwards. That's normally the process, right? Then we vote to adopt the ordinance and we're not adopt, or don't have a vote and decide we want to amend it, which we have the option to do. That's why you have a public hearing, right? And the good thing with the public hearing is it's more of a formal thing that's required by the state or by our charter. And so it'll, notice will go in the paper and then we'll see what people say. So I think, so if everybody's good, item number 13 is discuss and take action to approve calling a public hearing on Monday, August 24th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in room A at the Madison Town Campus, 8 Campus Drive, via Zoom for the purpose of reviewing a draft ordinance establishing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Be a second.
Second.
Okay, and then this would get published on the website like we've done before, people can review it ahead of time and then come with their comments. So all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. Okay, and any nays?
I am going to vote no, just because I don't think the document's ready.
Okay.
Oh, I had my hand raised for yes, because I am always in favor of hearing what the public has to say on these topics, even though, I've got my own thoughts, but, I need to hear what the public has to say as well.
Okay, so motion passes, so we'll go to the public hearing and that I think we'll take heart with what we hear back and then make a decision. All right, so it's one. So, all right.
Do you have a sense of when, well, we're
It's August 24th, yeah, it's August 24th, so it's an hour before our night meeting that night. So, and I'll make sure that it gets up by tomorrow, the draft one, so that's not there. Okay, item number 14, discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation amount of $19,950 into the town clerk and registrar voters reserve fund. Approved by Board of Finance, 7/15/2026.
Removed.
Second. Okay, so, and this is one that, we talked with them in the budget process, and there was some funds left over in the, registrar's account that is, Stacy said, why don't we use this as an opportunity to get that fund going? Just so we have a place to tap, so we can kind of flat fund elections now without having these peaks and valleys, depending on if it's a presidential or if it's end up having 3 referendums one year, or, things like that, or more town meetings, because it is a very unpredictable thing.
Yeah, just to build on
Yeah.
that, and for the people that don't follow this super closely, the state has created a bit of a moving target in around elections and the expense of elections. And during the budget season, we really struggled to come up with an appropriate funding level. So what we chose to do was to purposely or know that we were short funding it, but with a commitment that we would make it up. And as we get some voting under our belts, under the new rules, we'll be able to come up with a cleaner budget moving forward. So that's what this is.
So any further questions? No? Okay, great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, so now thank you for your patience, Facilities Committee. So we had to get through all that, but I figured this way we don't feel any pressure to get through all this. So now I want to welcome up David Kadamus, who chairs our ad hoc Facilities Committee that we started about 2 years ago. And this is just giving us update on this draft plan that he's been putting together and the committee has been working very hard on. And I want to remind people there was an interim report it's available on the website that does the first step in this process was to look at all the buildings in town, look at their square footage, look at the carrying costs of the building, how much maintenance costs, how much land we own. So there's a full report that actually does a great job inventorying all the building and lands that the town owns. And there was some conclusion that was driven out of that, and that's helping feed a little bit of this process. So, with that, I will turn it over to David.
Thank you. My name is David Kadamus. I'm chair of the Facilities Committee. With me tonight, John Freeze is here. He's our vice chair. And Charmaine Parent, who's was a member of the committee and has kind of been serving as a volunteer in the last few months, has been extremely helpful in this whole effort. I want to go through a handful of slides here to kind of give you an overview of what we've been doing and where we're going. And I thought it was useful just to basically understand what we were asked to do. Fundamentally, we were asked to assemble all the core information and come up with a plan for the town's facilities as well as their buildings, and kind of give a vision for over the next 10 to 15 years in terms of what would be potentially possible. Our goal is really, by default, was to shift this to a much more proactive approach rather than trying to deal with one project at a time and go through the kind of actions that we've done in the past that have kind of stalled and created an awful lot of planning fatigue. It's important to know what we're not, though, as well. This effort is not a master plan. It's really part of a much bigger master plan, which will include the surf club, it'll include the CIP, it'll include the school long-range planning program and other things that will come up. But we think this is an integral part of it. It's also, we're not trying to affect any kind of zoning or any of those kind of regulations nor any environmental things. We're just dealing with existing conditions as they happen today. Also, we're not making any suggestions for any privately owned land here in town. We're only looking at assets that are owned by the town of Madison, the land and properties. Basically, we took.
Just real quickly, because I think that actually needs to be over there because the camera's on there. I'm just saying, like online, people are seeing the presentation, but not you. I guess as long as Jeannie, can people hear David?
Can hear David.
I can hear him and I can see the presentation.
Or I can see the presentation, yes.
Stand over on that table on the other side. I could do that.
Sounds like you're good.
No, you can hear him and see the presentation.
Hear him and see the presentation. That's fine.
Okay,
Oh, good.
right.
You just can't see me, but that's probably.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure there was okay.
Maybe that's a good thing, Dave. I don't know.
Go ahead.
So, as Peggy said, we've been doing this for now 2.5 years. And I realized I went and added up. This will be our 6th presentation to the Board of Selectmen on this. We've also presented to the Board of Finance. We've presented to many of the other boards in town as well. And basically, we tried to bring an awful lot in the first year was a lot of these inputs. The town strategic plan of conservation development, the affordable housing plan, identifying current needs of all the various departments that are out there. What are the cultural and community kind of requests? Because we came in the middle of the academy vote and there was a whole host of requests in there that were not met as a result of the outcome. We got information back from us on recreation and the surf club and beach and rec folks. And also we've conducted, I think it was 12 or 13 separate public community gatherings from, everything from Rotary and Exchange to JC's, folks at the Chamber, Men Over 60, we've talked across probably 250 plus people that have actually engaged and heard what our thinking was and our options, and we got feedback. So all that was kind of put together, and we wanted to tie that in with the resources. But people don't realize we have 22 buildings that the town owns, but we also have 1,217 acres of land that's owned by the town. And so how do we tie all those pieces together with the needs and then ultimately engage the various financial components? How much does these things cost? What would be, are there opportunities to coordinate capital? Because that's a really important thing that we found is that if you're modernizing and repairing at the same time, our cost of construction goes down dramatically, rather than doing them in some sort of sequence where you actually undo something in the future that we already had to do to, let's say you replace a roof, but then you end up making changes and you end up having to destroy some of the roof. We've looked at new resources, but ultimately the outcome is options. And they say, what are the best outcome options? All right, we have lots of options we've identified. We believe there are certain options that are better than others, but that'll be for other people to decide. So we're not trying to make definitive recommendations here. We're trying to create a planning framework that lays out a series of options that will not only improve services for the town to the community, will have a better utilization of space, preserve many of the buildings, not only the buildings that we have, but importantly, the historic buildings that we own. There's so many historic buildings in this town that, and the history behind them is important to recognize. And we have a whole section in our report just on that alone. And then ultimately, if we do this right, the outcome is enhancing the property values for the property owner. So all those things are all important to what we're trying to accomplish. So fundamentally, if we look at this, we're truly trying to develop a comprehensive plan. That's our goal. We want to actually preserve the quality of life as well as preserve the history in the town and preserve assets. We want to address what the key needs are that we can identify. We want to maximize the utilization and utilization of space as best as possible on land, and ultimately define what the costs and funding opportunities are that may be out there as we move forward. As a result, we took these kind of major steps. We started by doing a core data analysis. That core data took almost a full year because there was so much of the data was in so many different spots and it wasn't all coordinated in one location. So we had to really understand and find all the properties. We had to understand the operating costs between the different organizations of the buildings. We had to understand all the capital needs and the various capital studies that were out there, as well as assembling all those needs. Once we had that core data, though, we could then start assimilating it and triaging it down to target where we think potential outcomes were or where opportunities. And those opportunities really were spaces that could be used more effectively, spaces that could be more improved in terms of utilization. Those are the kind of two major categories, as well as spaces that could serve the community and the town better. From that, we recommended to the Board of Selectmen, and they authorized us to do these feasibility assessments on those targeted building opportunities or targeted opportunities, landed buildings. Those feasibility assessments really was what has been the focus of the last year. In the last 3 or 4 months, we've been focusing on the community input based on those feasibility assessments because we had to ask ourselves, can you do this to a building? Will it work? Will this program fit? All of those are the fundamental questions we needed to ask. And then from there, we come down to options and recommendations. When we come down to it, I think everything that we've gone back to is talking about saving and restoring buildings to within adaptive reuse of existing facilities to make them better. We said that we identified spaces that should be demolished because they're at the end of their useful life. And it just was not economically feasible to restore them. How do we identified whole hosts of things to where you optimize and coordinate the capital investments, repairs, and upgrades. Well, I will share with you, and Jeffrey is the classic example. There's about half of the cost of renovating would be doing major repairs that need to happen in the roof, the windows, the mechanical systems, all those kinds of things. That all of a sudden really incorporates and tying those two things together at a time of renovation works very well to the town's benefit. We want to maximize the utilization of space. We actually think that the town can actually reduce the amount of space it owns and improve services at the same time. And we needed to identify, as part of our charge, town-owned parcels that may be potential for development or either leased or sold type of options. So we looked at all those categories. This is kind of the core of where we ended up, and really is the guide for the strategy going forward. We fundamentally, when we took the needs, we started assembling things and said, what items and what programs need to be combined or at least have strong adjacencies. So there's a whole host of educational type programs, the schools, Madison Youth and Family Services, the Board of Ed functions, school to career, athletics, after school programs, all those things have strong adjacencies and we think should have coordination. Obviously, the government, there's a whole series of the offices and those things. You can read them right there. We also came up with this idea of the historic common. And this became more and more important to us as we dove into the historic common is that area between the green and downtown. And it takes you from Congregational Church, Lee Academy, in essence, the buildings that are owned by the town, Lee Academy, Memorial Hall, the Powder House, the chapel building that's next there at Academy. And then we actually think Deacon John Graves should be part of that component because all those make a historical core. And in reality, when you look at that area of town and you tie in the fields and the senior center, you have a block that's very important to the town. And then you have the support functions. We heard tonight a little bit more about Sam was talking about the DPW and the equipment. One of the things he was talking about is when the equipments are stored outside, they don't last as long as when they're stored inside. So, coordinating grounds and DPW together and thinking about what to do with the buses and those kind of support functions, we group that. So those planning pillars, really, we think you should adopt going forward, that any major capital project, you ask, how do these things interrelate to one another? And how do these things ultimately come to a better outcome? And then the last item on there are the recreation components, which we the surf club and all the fields type of things. When we put it out, we then juxtapose those planning pillars, if you will, with the kind of key buildings that we felt needed to be touched in the plan going forward over the next decade. And then what are some of the options? And there are a lot of options. All right, not every, we have certain things that we think would be best, but those are going to have to be open for discussion in the community to come up with what they think. In the education, Jeffrey is a building that's in solid condition and we think should be saved and ultimately is a springboard to create that educational pillar environment, as a cornerstone. The town government, its campus, the town campus is really the focus of the town government. We believe it should stay that way. We think that historical commons, I talked about it before, should be a spot to create common space for community, culture, and historical use. And in many respects, one of the things we've been trying to do certainly before I was the chair of the Academy Committee back in 2010 and 2012, but even before then, since the 1990s, we've been trying to find a way to restore the vibrancy to that area of town. And all those various commissions have tried in many ways to do that, and we haven't been successful. And I think it's because we've been looking at it one building at a time rather than looking at it as a full complex. And I think if we consider it in that way, we're going to do better. The support, the DPW grounds should be integrated at the Fort Path site, we believe. And Nathan's Lane, we found ways to expand it to address the growing needs for the buses and store, because basically all the buses can't even be parked there now. And there needs to be other spaces for drivers and those kind of things. So we found ways you could actually modify within that site. And the recreation, we felt that the Academy Fields, Ryerson ultimately, as that's being torn down, can be potentially repurposed for recreational uses and the town campus learning center. So for those needs, those are the kind of options that are out there. And there are many different types of options that are subsets. And our report is 195 pages. And it goes all the way down from all these options, all the way to the costs of these options and what are the alternatives. So there's a lot of data and a lot of basic information there to really work it forward. What does it do? If you follow this plan, we think we can reduce our square footage by 11 or 12%. From right now, we have around 842,000 square feet, and we drop it down to around 715,000 square feet. More importantly, we add to community space and we reduce government space and some of the educational space requirements. So we found ways to kind of be better utilization and putting functions in the right spot. A good example, I think, is that in Memorial Hall, that came up as a building that needed to be looked at, because when we looked at the total cost of ownership for Memorial Hall versus the number of people or the amount of occupancy and usage in there, the numbers were off the charts. Just didn't make a lot of sense. And then we looked at the spaces. Well, the Cleveland Memorial Archives is in the basement. It's a rare book library. We have artifacts going back into the 1600s there. They have 3 or 4 small, residential dehumidifiers because the environmental conditions are so poor in the building. The probate court is, people, when they come to the probate court, they got to wait in the hallway to go in. Or if they have to go have a conference, from what the judge says, you can't even do it in there because there's not enough space. And there's a bathroom that you have to take 3 steps up, and it's challenging, to say the least. So some of those things were very interesting and drove us there. When we looked at the land as well, we identified basically about 138 acres that we thought of the 1,200. So it's basically 11% of the acreage as well that could be developed for something if you chose. So we're not saying it should be, but it could be. We were not good at, we had hoped to find potential commercial development. We did not find much. It just didn't work out. So most of the 3 parcels we looked at were all more residential in nature. But again, they're options. We preserve the open space, and the vast majority of open space is still in place. And it's fascinating. The statistics, only about less than a quarter of the square foot of the land that we have actually have buildings and functions on it. So we have almost 1,000 acres that don't have any buildings or recreation fields or anything like that. So what are the big triggers as we go forward? I think that's the real core question. We really believe that Jeffrey and DPW site expansion are the 2 most important triggers that are out there. And thinking about how you want to deal with those are really key. Jeffrey is we talked about, we went through the building with mechanical engineers, with structural engineers, with electrical folks, planners, space planners. People love the building because of its flexibility. Building, basically, when you take down the portables, we create really maybe 4 10,000 square foot blocks that could be programmed in many, many ways and very flexible. And it's fascinating that most of the program needs all fit within that kind of 10,000 square foot kind of need. So we're adjusting, whether it's Madison Youth and Family Services, pre-K, Board of Ed offices, school, after school programs, continuing education, they all kind of fit. And those are the options. We don't know which ones are going to be the most sense, but we know that those are some of the options. What happens is when you start dealing with the Jeffrey, it kind of triggers and opens up a number of other spaces. So it potentially could open up space here at the town campus, and most importantly on that historic hub, because the chapel is where Youth and Family Services is, and that is probably the most logical thing to move to Jeffrey. And that opens up that building, and it opens up a portion of Memorial Hall as well as a result. And the DPW, that's really the trigger for, not only is it an asset requirement and a need that's been out there for a long time, just for the programs, but also the Surf Club Master Plan kind of needs the space where the existing grounds department is. And that by tying those 2 functions together, you can coordinate those functions, get some economies of scale, and save some money. We think it makes sense. These are some of the ideas. And you see, these are the blocks. We broke it down into several blocks at Jeffrey. The big green block in the middle, we think is a 10,000 square foot size space that could be used for Madison Family Services. This yellow block is another 10,000 square foot space that could be used for Board of Ed offices. It could be used for pre-K. It could be used in a number of different options. All this purple around the perimeter could be used for continuing education, school to career programs that we've heard, the maker program, which needs a home, we heard. Those are the kind of things, as well as some flex space. There's some flex space there. The library, as well as the athletic, the gym, we think those should be used for recreation and athletics for the school as well as beach and rec. It makes sense. And the cafetorium we opened up as community spaces, and the idea here was, and this is an idea and an option, would be to split it in half, where the top part is more like a community conference room with stages and those kind of things. The bottom part would be a farm to kitchen culinary institute, where you could actually tie it into Bauer Farm, which is right adjacent. So we start tying a lot of these ideas together. We also did an investigation that in the long term, probably 15 years from now, 10 to 15 years from now, if you need to expand and look for a siting of a pool on the site south of Jeffrey, this area, in this area here, that wooded area seems to make the sense for a competition gym or a pool expansion of the high school. That's also for community. Here's just the DPW and grounds existing site versus the future site. So you can, if most people, I'm sure you've seen this, but basically you see the new buildings for grounds, which really focuses on the grounds mezzanine, 2 floors storage, as well as housing space, office and other spaces, a new salt storage, new ground storage, new emergency management, as well as additional DPW storage. So all those are on that site. We felt, then this was a fascinating one, because ultimately at one point in time, I really wanted to look at this as, should this go be more residential, because it's in such a residential part of town. But as we looked at it, the infrastructure that was there made so much sense to keep, that we felt it really made the most sense to keep that those functions where they are, and it's centrally located, and it really works. When we moved on to what are the secondary things, that whole function, the historic common is interesting, and this is about the vibrancy I was talking about. And I'm going to just kind of jump ahead in the interest of time. This is fascinating. This is, if you haven't seen the Green Book, or if you haven't gone to the Historical Society or the CLIMA, the Green Book is a walking tour of downtown, and that each of these buildings are identified, and they're all historic, incredibly historic buildings. I superimposed the dates. Lee Academy, 1821. Memorial Hall was built in 1897, but importantly, that was a site of a general store that was purchased by the Meigs family, and then they moved it downtown, and actually them and others donated the money to build the building. 1910 is when the Powder House was built. 1884 was the chapel. Chapel was originally built by the Congregational Church and used before they had the meeting house. And it's fascinating, when we crawled up in the attic and things of that nature, you see the old spindle for where the bell used to be up there, where the pulley is. You know, it still exists, and it's still up in the attic there. So we have some ideas for that building. And then, you know, originally 1884 was when Daniel Hand built the original Hand Academy, and then in 1921 was the main part that was built, and then 1939 after it, the secondary part. And then Deacon John Grave was 1685. It's an amazing, incredible amount of history right there. And I added the Congregational Church is 1836. So I think in any plan going forward, there's a responsibility that we have as in the town to preserve those assets and preserve those kinds of functions. You know, the bottom line is that as Academy was closed and the town government moved in the 90s to the town campus, it created a gap. I mean, back in the 80s, that was the vibrant spot of town. That's where everybody went. You park there and you walk downtown and all those there's all kinds of things. Your kids were going to school and my kids were going to school. So, that's all changed, and that's what we've lost, I think, from a planning perspective, is that how do you create that vibrancy back in that location of the town? And it really ties together the green with the downtown business district. So this is one option that's out there. We would basically restore Memorial Hall to its original design. Its original design was as a congregating space. It was a theater space. It was the gymnasium for Hand Academy. There was all kinds of things that were happening in that building. And it was a really as well as being a war memorial. So it was a memorial in honor of the people who served our country. That was one of the feasibility studies. If you remove the decking that's there, the steel structures that created the floors, can you bring the building back to its original form? That's what the study and the structural engineers and all the mechanical folks, they all said, yes, the building is solid, the building's in great shape. It's an incredibly good shape, actually. And that you could do this kind of design and have that accomplished. We would actually connect the powder house to that building to create some support space for those two functions. Powder House currently has the Welcome Center and the chamber in it. If you haven't been there in a long time, I urge you to go. It's not the greatest space. It certainly doesn't put Madison's best foot forward. I mean, there's still the old bars on the cell from the jail are still in the closets, are still there. So it's kind of difficult when you go in there. Again, the chapel is where Madison Youth and Family Services is. We think that could be opened up, and that ultimately should be the new Welcome Center, where you could have not only the Chamber of Commerce, Welcome Center, but also unmanned museum of the history of the town. There's these panels that the state that are touchscreen things, and you can load them. And much of our history has already been loaded on those. And you can put those as a kind of a self-serve, kind of find your way around Madison, not only local businesses, but also all the historical buildings. And then our thinking is that as an alternative, because this is clearly just an alternative, because the Academy is under investigation by the Board of Selectmen right now. And if for some reason your feasibility doesn't go forward, we thought we'd offer another option rather to just totally tearing it down. And that would be, we think you could save the historic front, the original 1921 part of the building, which was basically only 15,000 square feet. It's not very large, so it could be restored fairly economically, and tie an amphitheater off the back and a park that ties into the fields and ties into the playgrounds and ties into all those areas. So you really are turning that whole common area into a vibrant kind of cultural active area. The amphitheater could be used for graduations. It could be used for concerts, outdoor concerts in the summertime. It could, you could have indoor things at Memorial Hall as well. And so those are some of the thinkings. This was a quick, I've shown you this concept of Memorial Hall before. This is what they said, if you could take out the decking, this could be accomplished. Basically, the seating on the main level would roll back in under the balcony, and you create a big ballroom there where the Presidium is still there. So it's kind of cool. 200 plus seats. And it's a national landmark, so we think there's a real good opportunity for extra funding coming along. The chapel, the concept would be to kind of open it up to restore those beautiful windows, the fan window and the rose window at the top, by taking out the floor, opening up the attic to that open space. So you have a balcony and you have a big open space underneath. It's an option, and then you can create that museum space and the welcome center there. And then this would be the idea of based pending your feasibility review. This is an alternative option that would basically, the lower level would be community space, good bathrooms. We'd have an elevator in the space. The main level could be some sort of commercial function, maybe a restaurant, maybe a some other kind of commercial type function there, market type thing. And then the upper floor, we think would make sense to put the archives there, and it would get them into contained space in a solid building that can withhold the weight of all their materials and as well be properly preserved. Demolishing Ryerson, you're already moving forward on that. That was one of our recommendations. We think that should be preserved as a space. Potentially, it could be used recreationally in the interim, but it may be a position for a new school. The thought was that potentially in the 2040s, it may be a requirement to have another school in town. The Jeffrey portables would be removed and obviously create expansion. The town campus learning center would be removed, and we'd create it could be evolved softball spaces. We looked at the town-owned land. This is a graphic of all the properties. Every green dot is a property the town owns. There are 82 properties, 1,217 acres. Sorry. When we looked at commercially, we identified about 300 acres of land that we thought could be, because of the size and adjacencies, that could be investigated. There were some that we thought were commercial. None of those panned out. Housing, we found there's 3 properties. There's one on Durham Road. It's 20 acres, and it's east of Legend Hill and north of Brown. We think that could potentially house 14 units there. The biggest property that's adjacent that could be used for a lot of variety of things is on Ridge Road. We have almost 99 acres of land that's all adjacent to one another on Ridge Road. Could it be housing? It could be recreation. It could be a site for a school. It could be a lot of things. But if it was for housing, which would be a potential, we think there's probably 89 units could be accomplished there. We have designs that show not only how they could be organized, but also the septic and water and all those kinds of things. Nice thing about the Ridge Road property is it's on Connecticut water supply, so that it adds to the value of that as a property to make that easier. And then the last property is east of Cox Road, which is part of the Bauer Farm. Bauer Farm, the deed always said the bequest was that affordable housing could be part of it. That could be, we got a design potential there where you could put 33 units, but also preserve the walking trails and some of the other amenities that are there. When you look at the town land that you want to keep, basically, we really feel the academy fields are very important. As we've gone through our conversations with the various community members, we had a lot of folks that I didn't expect that were talking about the academy fields and the importance of the academy fields to their programs and things of that nature, from Exchange, Rotary, JCs. I mean, it was very loud from the. But we do think that the academy fields, Ryerson, and Town Campus Learning Center could be recreational space. From the support, obviously, we already talked about Nathan's Lane as well as Fort Path for those functions. And then there are lands that have adjacencies, and that was an important thing. We felt that any land that had a strong adjacency to existing town buildings should be retained by the town. So the town, those things, like we said, housing, they don't have strong adjacency. So we looked at, the Ryerson site should be retained by the town. I mean, I know should it be sold off and developed? And we think it should be retained as a potential long-term site for a future school or other functions. That whole area south of Jeffrey is important. So the Sage property we think is important, and it also has another historic home there, and the David Grave House is right there, and that we think is a really important piece. Again, another historical part of the town. And the question is, how do you do public-private partnerships to help deal with a lot of these historic buildings that I think there are real opportunities? And obviously the town campus. We don't think anything here that this whole center should be retained. So these were the potential housing designs that TPA, which was our consultant, came up with, and they did the ideas of how the houses could be located, where the septics are, where the water comes, where's the access roads. All this is in the report. It's again, these are options that people would evaluate and you'd have to, you can look at. They could produce, like I said, it's be a total of 136 housing options. And our focus was to try to keep them for senior first-time home buyers, as well as deal with affordable and workforce housing. Those were the three kind of categories that we felt were important. And those were things that were identified in plan of conservation development or things that were deficient in the town. So that's how we looked at that. We also did the calculations on what that would generate in terms of revenue for mill, in terms of tax revenue through the mill rate. It's somewhere between $950 and $1 million a year between if you did all of them. But that's, again, that's a long way before you can get there. There's a lot of discussions on that has to happen before you get there. These were the two kind of concept designs of how Ryerson could be developed on the left, a playing field, pickleball courts, as well as tennis courts, potentially even a bubble over those that could happen and tie together. And where the town campus learning center that could accommodate another field easily or other recreational activities. Financing, how do you pay for it? What does this all cost? Well, if we take just the options we were talking about, and many of these, it doesn't make any difference which option. The cost is the cost of renovating a building. The cost of renovating Jeffrey is basically going to be the cost of renovating Jeffrey, regardless of what functions you put there, as long as all those functions go in there. So basically, the whole program is between $65 and $70 million over a 10 to 15 year period. And so one of the things that I thought we looked at as a committee is, how do you tie that in? And how, obviously this has to be coordinated with existing resources, existing capital plans, existing bonds, that kind of stuff. I also thought it was useful to look at what was the historical spend. So we went back to 1995 and every year went through the audit and identified what was spent on capital items. Now, capital items include that front end loader is in there and probably some roads as well as the buildings and those kind of things. We backed out all debt service and that kind of stuff. And it came out, and you can see the chart there. 10-year average is $130 million is what we spend every 10 years. Over the last 3 decades. That's what we spent as a town. So it's kind of already baked into the kind of spending rate that we have. So this is not, it's roughly half of that amount. Clearly there'd be other resources, and clearly I'm not suggesting it's totally affordable, but I'm just saying within the context, this is not out of the realm of things that we've done in the past. And then a concern. There's a couple of pictures of the inside of Academy. When you ignore a building and just let it sit and die on the vine, this is what happens. You accelerate the costs, and they just grow exponentially. And all of a sudden, what was once an easy solution in the future becomes very hard. That's why we think moving on Jeffrey, certainly I'd love to see folks move on Jeffrey within the next 8 to 12 months. That may be unrealistic, but nonetheless, it's that kind of urgency, I think, that because there's other systems that are all of a sudden starting to demand attention, and you can solve a lot of problems by doing that. We also are concerned that, obviously we heard tonight, state mandates on various things start coming in and start affecting you. And if you don't get in front of them, they get done to you. So some of our thinking is, how do you get a plan that gets in front of these things? And we think there are options. So concluding, I'll let you read this. And I just wanted to make a quick 2-minute statement here, because like I said, we began our work about 2.5 years ago. And there was understandable pressure at the beginning to really focus on the vacant schools. And what are you going to do with it? But we really felt we needed to fall back and move forward. So that first year really was focused on getting the core data together, and it wasn't easy. And boy, it frustrated a lot of the members. I thought I was going to lose a number of members of the committee. There was the frustration was very high because every time we kind of come together, it was like grabbing mercury. You know, every time you grabbed it, it squirted away another way on me. But once we assembled, we created facts, and this report that you have that we're providing you now in draft form are the facts. All right, you know, people will come to different conclusions based on the facts. But the facts are the facts. Facts are we have 22 buildings. The facts are we have too much space in this town right now, and we don't need it all, and that we can actually do better with less space. The facts are that we have 1,200 acres of land, and some of it could be developed or repurposed in another way. So these are facts that we should be focusing on. And so, like I said, at the outset, this is not a master plan, only part of a much bigger plan that's out there. And our goal really is to provide a strategic direction and to stay grounded into those kind of core 5 principles and those pillars that we talked about. And if you stay to those, we believe as a committee that you will make good decisions. So ultimately, between Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and all the other key leadership roles, it's kind of we're handing it off at this stage that says, where do you go from here? And how do you start taking this wealth of information? And I think it's really valuable information and really drive it forward. So basically, we recognize this really is a lot this report is a lot to digest. This is just, you read it and I mean, if you ever had trouble falling asleep, read our report. You know, and going through the cost estimates on all these things and everything that's in there. And we know that some of these recommendations that we have and some of these options are going to have a lot of strong support. Other things are going to be disagreeable. There are going to be a lot of people that are going to disagree as well. So I think now, as a town, we need to go through and guide the community through this process to make decisions. And I think realistically, what we've heard over and over again is that we can't have planning drift and go on and on ad infinitum. We need to kind of put a stake in the ground, understand some people are going to be happy, understand some people are not going to be happy, but you have a lot of people in the middle that have to be convinced one way or the other. And that should be the focus, and that's where we should move. So thank you for your time, and thank you for this opportunity to be able to present this tonight. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Well, I just want to be the first to say and recognize the extraordinary amount of time and energy and effort you've put into this. It is hundreds of pages. I just, every time we put a committee together like this of volunteers, I am struck by how special it is to have the people in Madison that we have. So I just want to recognize what you've done, the effort you've put in, and say thank you.
I mean, I would echo what Bruce just said for sure. I mean, Dave, wow. Thank you to you and your committee. I mean, my goodness, what'd you say? 195 pages. That's that's incredible. Wow. I'm going to read it every night by my bed as I go to sleep. And I'm sure I'll glean things every night from it. And I do think there's such an opportunity here to take so many of these ideas and start to think about them, to start to create committees to think about ideas to move our town forward in different directions. I'm so appreciative of all the thought, energy, to think about things holistically, because I think that's something we probably haven't been great at over the years that I've been involved in town government. And I really do appreciate your ability to bring it all together for us in one cohesive package where we can start really thinking about projects and ideas and bringing those ideas to the public for sure. So thank you.
Well, let me just add one thing, because I should have at the very outset introduced the full committee members, and not only the people that are here, as a little bit about their background. As you know, I've been a resident of town for many years and have really been a facility, worked in the facilities world and master planning world and building management world. John Fries, who's the vice chair, has been part of the construction and steel construction industry and for his whole professional career. So he's got a whole wealth of experience. Nick Conti, who's, as you all know, was the manager from the Neck River School. And he brought his expertise from Gilbane. Megan Girolamo was, she's the president of Silk Town Roofing, which is the largest roofing company in New England for commercial buildings. So she brought a lot of expertise in terms of the costing and reviewing of costs and those kind of things. And Vance Taylor, last but not least, was he's got a lot of experience with economic development, with commercial development, and all those kinds of ideas, property, real estate. So we had a real great mix of talent on this committee, incredible amount of talent, and hundreds of years of experience in this space.
Dave, I'm in awe of what your committee has accomplished, and you've given so much thought to developing this plan. I'll bet your committee members have also given thought as to what you would like to see this Board of Selectmen do next.
Oh, yeah.
And what might that be?
They can run with it, would be number one. I think the next big step is
Told
that
us to read it at night, Al. I think that's what he told us.
I think it goes to, public meetings, just like you have done with the surf club, I think is the next important step. But I think it's not going to work if you only look at the surf club versus the CIP versus the school program versus this program, and you keep them in separate compartments. I think you have to integrate all four of those kind of major capital initiatives together to set some priorities and say, how do you manage those kinds of things? And there's a huge financial component to this whole thing. In terms of how's the timing work within the bonding and keeping our balance sheet strong, and whether or not you use any of your fund balances even as a flywheel for how to kickstart some of these things and then restore them down the road. I mean, I think there's a lot of conversations around those kinds of things. So the ideas are interesting, and the thoughts of the plan is fascinating and a lot of fun to do. But it's really about how the rubber hits the road when you start weighing these priorities and weighing these options and saying what needs to happen first and what happens second. That's what really takes time. And that's really the art to the science of what we're talking about here.
Thank you.
I think to build upon what you just said, Dave, I think it's also what's the appetite of the public also, right? So, we can come up with a lot of great ideas, but some of it is completely dependent on what the public is interested in and willing to focus on. I mean, the public is our deciding body here. So I think that's an important point.
Yeah, I think I agree. And that's one of the reasons we went back and looked at the historic spending. Because I think if you put the future spending within the context of what you've done in the past, and that is not outrageous, that it's something that the town has done and done well and preserved its culture and preserved its quality of life and preserved its financial stability, then I think that erases some of those questions.
Well, and I think one of the big parts of this is purpose for buildings, right? We've talked a lot about that. A lot of these buildings that you've touched on require major upgrades, or no matter what you use the building for, to your point, right? So we're going to be spending money on these buildings in the future, no matter what. They're in our capital plan. Morrill Town Hall needs investment in
It's
it.
about $4 or
Whatever-
$5 million
Yeah,
right
whatever
now.
we're gonna do with that bill, right? So, and youth and family needs some investment in it, and it's in order to sustain them to even, and then Jeffrey was identified, there was a lot of infrastructure issues with Jeffrey, right? That we were gonna have to put a lot of money into Jeffrey, no matter what we did. So before we just put money into kind of patchwork and kind of hobble along, what's the ultimate and best use for this building? So I think your committee did a great job, like looking at that, you know, and thinking about where the location is. Some of these things are in strategic locations, right? Commonalities, the way the space is laid out, what is it used for? So trying to marry up that with the capital plan, because I think a lot of times we kind of lumber along making decisions. Well, the roof really has to get replaced. We don't think about, is this building going to be, are we going to change the use of that? And that gets back to the academy conversation as we talked about that hotel concept, right? As a total change of use. We never looked at like what the requirements would be from a septic standpoint for the whole block, right? Because that impacts what you do on that site, could impact what we could do with Memorial Town Hall. If all the septic capacity in that whole site ends up going to one use, now we've restricted what we can do in other town buildings. So that was another reason that we were like, we really need to assess the full site, not just focusing on one specific building. So I think that's what the goal of this is, right? And we might all have disagreements maybe about what the right use of those buildings are. Should we put Board of Ed offices in Jeffrey? To me, the first thing is we should hold on to Jeffrey, right? There's value to that building. And then we figure out what's the right mix. You've made a recommendation, the committee has, looking at everything. That'll be more of a public conversation that we go. But to me, the takeaway is Ryerson, tear it down. Jeffrey, we keep and repurpose in some way, right? And then the DPW site, I can't emphasize enough, that has been kicked down the road for 20 years, right? So that is a project we know has been looming. It's been for 3 or 4 years. Design plans, we kept trying to get the costs down. How do we address building and grounds, which is at the Surf Club? Now the Surf Club plan is fast forwarding, and we need them out of there to really make the next plan work for the Surf Club, right? So it's all the pieces are starting to kind of come together. So that's the beauty of having this broader kind of approach, rather than making those silo decisions, which I know we've all been frustrated with over the last, probably 15 years.
Yeah, it's so helpful to know that when one domino falls, this is what's going to be coming along with that, to a degree. I think also what this helps to give us a better visualization of, we hear from the public, take care of what you have, right? Don't always build something new. Sometimes taking care of what you have involves a repurposing. It is pretty eye-opening earlier in the presentation to see what the volume of empty space is, vacant space in buildings that we are currently operating out of. So, in what way can we consolidate efforts for best utilization, best organization, and having these suggestions, helps to give better guidance as we move forward from people that are clearly well-experienced professionals. And we are so lucky as a community to be receiving their services for free.
And I think, I do want to highlight also the land use discussion is important, because we are going to have to put in a report to the state as a regional housing plan. And that's came out of our affordable housing plan we adopted a few years ago, identifying potential locations for housing development in town. So that work is now there, right? We may not be just one site. Ultimately, it could be no sites. I mean, the town, that would have to be a vote by the town to develop something like that. But at least now we've narrowed it down. We have some targets, we talk about it, and then we can make decisions about that. Because we've done all the hard work now to see if it's even feasible. I know there was some other sites that we talked about early on, and then luckily the consultants helped us say that doesn't make sense, And
it's
Yeah,
part
there
of
were
the,
about 20 different sites that we looked
Yeah.
at, kind of really little down, and there's still 2 or 3 sites that are potentials that we can do stuff with. One of the things that struck me, and it just reminded me what Jen was talking about, was the domino effect. And one of the ideas I know that's been kicked around was that full demolition of the academy. And what was fascinating, because I hadn't thought about full demolition of the academy other than, all right, so we demo it and have a nice park there or something like that. Well, when the architects started looking at that, they said, look at the gap that's going to create. You're going to create this huge void right in the middle of that block. And the historical begs something to be there. So that was the reason why we pulled back and said, how can we just kind of think about the front, that original 15,000 square feet. So, I'd offer that as just a idea that's, you have to think about think of that area holistically, just like you have to think about, how does Jeffrey interface with Han, with Olson, with Power Farm? All those things you have to think about it is because they all affect one another in a very important way, and it's useful.
I do have two quick questions regarding the vacant parcels. In looking at those, I know you said Ridge Road is already connected to public water.
Yes.
Okay, and with the other sites, do we know?
Cops Road is on public water. The road, the Durham Road site is not.
Right.
That would have to be well.
Exactly, and then do we know, because I'm not knowledgeable, how do we know that the, I guess, aquifers are capable of servicing more homes and not disrupting well service for established homes?
We'd have to do some testing
Okay.
afterwards. I mean, it's kind of, this is the feasibility level. All right.
Yeah.
If this is feasible and makes sense, then there should be testing. So, up in Ridge Road, you want to do core testing because it's been used as for waste facility and a dump at the time. So, what's there? Is it feasible to look at it? So you have to do core testing to see if that's would work or not. In the Durham Road, you'd have to do core testing to understand the aquifer and all those kinds of things. So there's a number of those kinds of tests that would have to happen.
Okay.
But we decided not to go forward and do those tests at this stage because these are big options that we have to have a much further direction on.
Right. We need to do septic though.
Septic, they looked at all the septic opportunities at all three sites and laid it all out in terms of septic plans that would not trigger state kind of community septics. They'd be regional septics that could be accommodated within our existing planning and zoning regulations and building regulations.
Okay.
So everything that they proposed meets existing building regulations would not require any exceptions to the zone.
Okay, and then my other question is, if housing were to go in Ridge Road at some point, has there been given consideration as to where the stump dump type facilities would?
There's a couple options we've looked at on that. There are really 3 or 4 options. They're articulated in the report. One is if you didn't do the full development, you could still use part of that area for the stump dump. There's a parcel that's adjacent to a highway and off of Cops Road that the town was gifted by when 95 got put in. It's about 2 acres.
Oh, okay.
There needs to be a road put there. I can't remember the name of the road that goes to that. I want to say Fairview, but it's not. It's adjacent to it's east of the Grove School.
Okay.
Across Cops Road there's an option there.
Oh, right, yeah.
We think that many of the recycling functions at the stump dump probably should be incorporated into the design of the DPW ground site because the DPW grounds folks, they're the ones who take a lot of the recycling and things from the surf club and all the other parks and stuff, and that's where they put it. And we also have, in Guilford, the transfer station, all the town residents can recycle all their metal and all those kinds of things there. So, so it's really the bulky waste site. Mostly, it's the brush
Right.
and leaves and grass
Right.
functions. And one of the questions is, all right, maybe you can compost that and use some equipment to do it. And then maybe it can be used at our farm, some of the composting for public gardens. There was one concept of maybe doing public gardens up at Ryerson as well. So, you know, then the composting could be stored in those sites. So there's other lands that were, you know, basically, if you can identify a staging area, then they can be stored in other places. So those are the kind of options we've looked at, but that kind of happens down the road.
Right, okay, great.
I have a wind-up question, and it's directed at the selectmen. I think, just like the public, we selectmen are eager to get involved in the details. But I think at this moment, as this gets rolled out to the public, what are the questions at this point we would like the public to respond to in terms of this plan? Without getting into details, what is it we want to ask the public at this point? As they learn more about these thoughts. Otherwise, I'm afraid people will comment on 100 different things, great detail. You asked a very good question about where does the sump dump go? But I think if we initially start off at that level of detail, we will never build momentum towards the overall concepts that this committee is presenting us. So I'm trying to ask us as we roll this out, what is the first thing we want the public to react to?
Well, I'm going to answer the question by changing it. I don't think that it is going to be productive to roll this out in its entirety.
Yeah.
The committee has come up with some natural organization around the ideas, right? The historic, the support. I think that we need to break this into bite-sized pieces and talk about, let's roll out the support part or the athletic part or the housing, whatever one we want to do first. If you just put the whole thing out there, there's no way that we're going to corral the conversation at all. But if we can say, we'll get to everything in its turn, but this is right now, we're going to focus on this. With an eye towards everything else, we're not going to say those things don't exist. I think we might be able to get some good productive conversations out of it.
And Bruce, I kind of can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but I completely agree with you.
It's recorded. You know that, right?
It's on tape. I think people right now are pretty focused on the surf club. So I think to your point, I think we've got to break it into projects, into components, into buckets, whatever we want to call it, so that it's digestible. I think to, think about this as one plan. I struggle with how the public is going to react to that and how they might digest it. I'm not sure. I just think it's too much right now. I mean, 195 pages is a lot for me, Dave. My goodness, I'm going to be reading it every night.
Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
Yeah, in the 250 people that we presented ideas to and talked to, there were a lot of disagreements on the things. People saw the project and they said, like that. They saw the things that, don't do that, like kind of stuff. But there was one thing that everybody agreed on, and that was that it needs to be a comprehensive look. So if you kind of tie this together as a comprehensive, this piece with all those others and say, we're really trying to look at the town comprehensively, that's going to resonate, I think, at least from the sample of people that we talked to.
I mean, in fairness, Dave, too, it's probably the first time we've ever done a comprehensive look across all of our facilities, all of our land, et cetera. So, I agree with you.
Well, I think that our next agenda item is kind of touching on the same thing because it talks about process of prioritizing capital spending, right? So we have to set what are those priorities, right? In terms of, because this is a long-term plan, right? So there's going to be projects that sequence itself. You do this project, then you do that, right? So I think as a board have some decisions that we have to make in the near term about what those priorities are. And then I think, as I said, the headliners out of the report is we got to keep Jeffrey, and we got to then make a decision about what we really think, how should we repurpose Jeffrey, because that's a lynch and the town. So those two things, and the DPW site. So I think those bubble up to the top, in terms of, do we agree with that, and then if we agree with that, that has to sequence in, that 3-year look or going out, not unfortunately, and the next 12 months, but I think, and then looking at that, Jeffrey, DPW, and then Surf Club, which I think we're going to hear from a lot of people that there's some, Surf Club is also going to be a sequential thing. It's going to be phased in. We're not going to just pull the trigger and like redo the whole Surf Club, right? There's going to be phases to that. So I think looking at the priorities in the Surf Club plan and then choosing the priorities there, this helps us then figure out how we pay for it, how it falls in line with everything else. And then we start going from there.
Well, but
that's my initial thought,
you can't forget about the Ryerson and TCLC piece of the puzzle as
which
well,
is
because we've already, said that we're taking
Yeah.
steps towards, removing both of those buildings.
Right.
And then we're gonna have these plots of land that we don't wanna have sitting derelict either. So, yeah.
And those
We've
are the
got
ones
some-
that came out of this study, right? 'Cause
Right.
we had a big conversation about why are they even looking at Ryerson? Well, we need to confirm that that's the right? And they came back and said, that's the right. So
Yeah.
we took action. And so that was a clear thing that came out of this too, as well as the portables. So there are some immediate action items, 2 of which we're actually doing.
Yep.
Right. And so there are things happening. I know that sometimes, so it kind of gets into item number 16 here about how we want to go about that priority sending. And then I do think I think we need some time to marinate on this a little bit, and there might be some more questions about what the committee has done. Why did you go this direction versus that direction? Did you think about this? Those types of feedback I think would be helpful for us. This is a public conversation, right? So there'll be members of the public watching this, so it'll be interesting to see kind of people's take on this. I guess I ask any member of the public is, there are going to be things you're going to hate in this. Don't focus on small things. It's the big picture, right? This is a big picture conversation right now. Just like the concept plan is for the Surf Club. It's not that detailed, this little thing is going to look like this. This is a general conversation about where we go in the town. And I think it's been great how you've laid it out in these, I forget what you call it, the filters, right? Thinking about it that way. I always call this like, these are like, guardrails, it's not a precise, I guess it's really guardrails, and the road might vary a lot depending on where we end up in terms of priority setting, so.
I think too, Peggy, it's important to match or at least have the conversation. And Dave, you guys may have done this already, but it's looking at the strategic plan and how the strategic plan aligns with, so it's that's sort of the public's voice and how that aligns with the facility plan and projects that we might then entertain. So I think that's a really important conversation that we're going to have at some point.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because he mentions that it needs to align with that. Also, the affordable housing plan, this ticks on some things and that the plan of conservation development, there is, trying to keep open space, trying to, all the different land use policies the town went through to do the new POCD. This ticks some of that and aligns with it. So maybe trying to demonstrate that, like in some way, in the document or presentation. I think that's a great point.
I would like to hear from the Board of Education or the administration exactly what their ambitions are for the Jeffrey School, how they would intend to use it, because this represents a shift, right? We, for years, really put the bare minimum into that building because they said, we're getting out, right? Now we're talking about a new or renewed education component to it and putting that money back into the building. So I would just like to hear in their own voice, this is what we'd like.
And I think that's an important point. We've
Reasonable. Yeah.
we had, not, the chair of the Board of Ed was on the committee, right? Dr. Cook has been involved in the conversations, but I don't think they've been more, you know, reactive to different proposals and ideas rather than like, this would require some commitments on their point, right? If we move forward. So they're going to have to evolve their thinking on this and definitely have a more robust input, I guess, on what they would envision they need from Jeffrey. So I think that's a fair point. Any other comments? So I guess I know you're probably thinking next steps. I think we have to do a little of our own work, I think. And, you guys have done all your work almost, right? So I think sit back and I think let us think this through a little bit more. Let's see what we hear from the public now that this is out there. I think maybe in our next week we can talk a little bit more about this. Do we want to have a public rollout of this, or do we want to spend some more time massaging this before we took it as a formal public rollout? All those things. I don't know if I'm ready to talk about that tonight. So,
just a question. So the report that we got in preparation for the meeting is not the presentation that you gave tonight. So
it was emailed.
The topics.
So the presentation was emailed to you over the weekend, and then the full report was updated on the Google Drive today.
I did not get, I went through, we got 3 or 4 different emails. And then the one that was included in the packet. So at this point, there's.
Yeah, we'll make sure everybody has the up-to-date everything. And
Right.
it was, because.
Right now, the draft report is on the Google Drive as well, and I just sent to Jeannie the slide deck, so she can.
I don't know that I heard any new thoughts in your presentation. It's just wasn't the material that we got before the meeting. That's all. I'm not trying to suggest that it's different. It's just.
And that might just be a misunderstanding, because I know you sent me an updated presentation, I think, and then I sent that around, but I didn't have the updated report.
Yeah,
so
I sent a draft presentation on Friday because I wanted to be able to have, there was only a couple minor editorial things that I did in this slide deck before tonight. But like I said, I provided Jeannie with this existing slide deck.
Yeah. So we'll make sure it's the right thing. I guess it's
and the report is on the Google Drive and draft form still. So it's a question of how do you want that published?
She did a new version with a new name that has all the new page numbers in it. So I'll make sure that like a fresh email goes out of it.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. And I think, item number 16 is this process that I'd sent around kind of an idea of how we could go about this process if we wanted to involve more a professional to kind of workshop this with us, capital priority setting. I spoke to staff. They felt like they could do some of this work. I think they felt like they can give us all the information that we need, right? And give thoughts about like operational things. But I think when there's a bigger picture strategic piece here about what we want to be priorities, it's really up to the board and the public, right? Ultimately. So I guess I wanted to hear some thoughts on how you would like this process to go. Getting this kind of facilities thing here, circle master plan, and then our CIP plan, right? And how do we start kind of sequencing this and looking at it from a financial standpoint in addition to a strategic standpoint. So it's kind of 2 pieces here. And the idea would be come up with some sort of scoring matrix for projects. Not too rigid. Some of this is going to have to be a little flexible, but having some sort of way to score things or prioritize them through some sort of like, feasibility screen or something like that.
So the output document.
I was going to say, I think this is a great opportunity for AI. I mean, this whole thing is an AI prompt.
Agree with you, John. I totally agree.
Would be, that would be the output from that process, would be
I think so, like,
priorities.
yeah, what the public wants us and we as a board want to focus on first in terms of what are the most important projects, but looking at it, what's operational and not necessary, conditions of buildings, uh, cost, it's, those people talk about the needs and wants, right? And sometimes the need isn't immediate, but you kind of have to do it to protect yourself from cost down the road, right? Because the more you kick the can down the road, the expense just keeps getting greater and greater. So, and that's why I think sometimes people are like, do you need to do that now? It's like, well, I don't know it now. This is going to be really bad 5 years from now if we don't do this, right? So, so I think that has to factor in it too. There's just a lot of different things that have to be thought about because there's the day-to-day CIP plan, which is all these little projects, right? Anything over 50,000. 25, can't remember. And then there's these big capital projects.
Well, with all due humility, I don't think the five of us could do it on our own. I think we would benefit from having outside expertise.
So, so I mean, we've got some internal expertise that we've never had before, and recognizing they have a day job. They've also put their hand up and said, we think we can help with this. And I think if we can articulate what this is, we should give them a shot at taking the ball as far as they can take it. And in that process, maybe it helps us refine more what we want to do before we have to start going outside. So, if staff subject matter experts were going, no, we don't want any part of this. You got to find somebody else who can do it. We're not qualified. That'd be one thing, but they're not saying that.
Well, it's mixed. Some staff feel this is a monster, right? And it's going to be a huge time commitment. And then others feel like they have an idea and they think that they could assist.
So let's give them a chance.
Yeah.
Let's give them a chance. I mean, we have a level of expertise now on board that we haven't had in the past. So, if the expectation isn't that they're going to get it across the goal line, just move the ball, then let's give them a chance to move the ball.
So I'll talk to the staff again and see what they think is a deliverable they can give to us, right? And like I think point is well taken. They maybe will get it more organized in a way that we can then take it to another level, right? So, so I'll talk to them and come back with what they think is a deliverable. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, with that, then item number 17, we'll open it up to citizens' comments. First in the room, and raise your hand, please. State your name and address. Try to limit it to under 2 minutes.
Greg Scalzo, 104 Soundwood Drive. I just want to thank the board for going over the affordable housing ordinance earlier. It was really good discussion. But you were going to continue from the town. I did want to add my voice of concern to those who spoke before me about the tax dollar provisions. I'm not sure that the benefit of that for the future outweighs the risk. And just that, Madison tax dollars should be used directly to benefit Madison. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ron McMillan. I'm at 24 Lenore Drive. And so I appreciate the committee putting together the plan to go through the whole facilities thing. But what I didn't see in there that wasn't included in one of the pillars was kind of the community impact or how it's going to impact the community. So I'm going to give you like a really good example because on one of them around the Durham Road one, to build all those houses, you got to demolish a bunch of open space. So if one of the pillars is to actually maintain our open space, but one of the things that's there to understand that like to do that, you're going to demolish a bunch of open space as well as like a pedestrian walkway for all the kids to go to bike around. And so I just encourage you guys to really understand that. I'm going to put it in a little bit of a different way to help you kind of think about that. So one of the ideas was to demolish Ryerson and build a pickleball court. And then the other part was to demolish a bunch of open space to build houses. And that may be the right call, but let's put it on the other way around. If you demolish Ryerson and built a bunch of houses, would you also demolish a bunch of open space to build a pickleball court? Probably not. So I really want to encourage you guys to think about it that way as well. Because when it comes out and says like, hey, we can build a bunch of houses and reduce the tax burden, it sounds great. I went to the JC's one. I was there. Everyone walked out of there saying like, hey, this is great. We're going to have more houses. This is a way to help pay for it. But when you really sit back, and that's why I encourage each one of them, not just the one that I highlighted, like what are the potential downsides and what's that community impact going to be? So I really encourage the Board of Selectmen to also think about that pillar as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comments in the room? Yes.
Yes, Richard Valentino, 23 Beardville Road. 7 years here in Madison. And yes, every time I walk by that school, I question what we're doing about it. So I can appreciate when talking about cost, but how about the cost of not doing something? And this concept of baby steps doesn't work in the business world. It does. So what I would also invite is for general public, it's nice to have your voice come up with an alternative. Because all we're so far is complaints. Come up with an alternative. Okay? 7 years later, we still have a school doing nothing. What's the cost of not doing something? Maybe we should focus on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments in the room? Yeah.
Not so sure it's a comment. My name is Peter Gillick. I live at 32 Ridge Road. I'm a house restorer. Made lots of 18th century houses here in town. And the Little Sage property is a house that is historical and it's falling apart and it's sitting there doing nothing. I would like to offer my expertise on that. And for the town, if we can cost the town anything, I would raise some money to restore that. So, with volunteer money and grants. And I'm just wondering if the town would be willing to look at that. 15 years ago, we restored the Bower Barn. And how we did that. Madison was selectman at the time. We raised money. The money was sent to nonprofits. And the nonprofits paid us. That way is all the going through out for bid. Things like that. Which is a possibility. But the house, our town deserves to stay with historic houses. General's residence was a shame. It should never happen. So I would like to have you guys think about that.
Thank you. Any hand raised online?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, going once, twice. All right.
Wait, Craigie, Jim raised his hand.
Just under the wire.
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, the cat's back.
Say your name.
Jim, you're muted.
Jim, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I've got a few things. So with the facilities report, they discuss talking to the different groups in towns and following it. So they talk to Rotary, they talk to, the different political committees, like all of these different groups, but never the public. The public was never in this discussion. The other thing I'd like to bring forward is they are presenting, their plan and all of that. As I followed this through their different meetings, they didn't have other alternatives. they didn't look at them from what I can see. And maybe they are. And when we were all in school and we had to present our papers and our work, we always asked for the backup. How did you come to these conclusions? And I simply ask, how did you come to these conclusions? You know, you decided that, you know, say Memorial Town Hall is a theater or a meeting space because that's what it was. So then should the chapel be returned back to a religious space? Should the Powder House become a gun club? You know, how did these things come about? I didn't hear any other alternatives. I didn't hear like that Memorial Town Hall is spaces for businesses now. Maybe we should take the archives and historical society and actually make them part of Madison town government, which I think makes sense. You know, we need to protect our history. And we also need to look forward. Like, we're 200 years old. In 200 years, what is going to be the needs of the town? You are the stewards of the town. They could have no idea 200 years ago what the needs were. So the fact that we're looking at land and saying, like, our best use for this land that the town owns is to build housing. You know, what are the other alternatives? Are there future things we haven't thought of? As stewards, you need to do that. You need to like think forward beyond this. You're saying the state's requiring these affordable housing things. The state government could change and all of that can go away next year, 2 years, 5 years from now. And you're locking in decisions forever. So if the town decides outside of what the state guidelines are, this is what the town wants to do, then that's fine. But at this point, I don't see that. You know, I see using the state as an excuse and that doing what the agenda of a few want. You know, like reach out to the people. We spend a ton of money on reports and you're, you know, saying we're going to do these affordable housing things, like, and you never asked the town. You never said, like, does the town want to donate our money and our land to benefit a few people for affordable housing? You never asked that.
All right. Well,
And when I asked for reports, I was
you.
denied via FOIA, and we are now in a state arbitrator, right? So you won't provide the reports that the town paid for.
We're going 4 minutes now.
For the public.
I appreciate.
Okay, I'm up with my 2 minutes. I appreciate that. I'll send an email and ask you for a scheduled time to meet with you.
Happy to do so. Thank you. All right. Any other hands raised online? No. All right. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.